Sidinhlanhla Nzama is an investment actuary at Old Mutual, and he's joining us in studio to speak to the concerns that many South African parents have as they send their children off to school for the first week in many provinces this week. And that's, how am I going to afford my child's education from primary school to high school all the way through to university? Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Chirisha.
Now, as I mentioned, schools are going back in many provinces today, and many parents are concerned. Just how am I going to finance my child's education? Is this a concern that you deal with often?
Certainly. Specifically in South Africa, I believe that one of the key things that most parents want is to afford their children quality education. And what we've seen at Old Mutual is people coming to ask, how do I do that? How do I save up for that? And specifically, how much is it? How much does it cost, the actual cost of education? Because also in South Africa, we have the public school sector and we have the private school sector. We have tertiary education. So which one do you save for, and when, and how do you start? So those are the various concerns that we see in the quest for quality education in South Africa.
Now, let's have a look at some of those numbers. If your child is in grade 1, starting this year, how much are South Africans paying for those school fees?
Well, roughly, what we've done research in South Africa where we looked at majority of the schools, both in public sector. What we look in public sector is roughly those what we refer to as ex-Model C schools. And we also look at the private sector schools where the costs are actually slightly, in fact, significantly higher. So if you look at the ex-Model C schools, the average in South Africa this year, in 2015, is actually about 27,000 for tuition. And if you look at the private school, primary school is roughly about 65,000 on average, while high school, especially if you look at grade 10, 11, and 12, that is significantly higher at about 105,000 rand a year. And again, that is just tuition fees. It excludes things like boarding, textbooks, stationery, uniform. So that is quite a substantial amount of money. And if you look at universities, we also looked at across all our major universities in South Africa and most of the courses and degrees that your child can do. And the average in 2015 is about 42,000 rand a year just for tuition fees. And again, it excludes residence and things like textbooks. So 42,000 rand will set you apart for university.
So you're telling me that some high schools or primary schools will cost you more than university education in South Africa?
Certainly, especially if you look at the private schooling, it's certainly way more than the university schooling for both primary and high school. If you look at the ex-Model C, it's still slightly lower than university. However, with inflation going forward, which I'll highlight to you now how much it is, we'll see that also catching up. But if you look at the private education, it's certainly way more than that, especially the high school component. It's quite expensive. It's about 100,000 per year.